Please rise for the Honorable Judge Lopez.
You may be seated. We are here today to review the case of the people versus Hernán Cortes. He is charged with violating Articles 3, 4, 5, 9, and 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Prosecution, you may begin with your opening statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, Counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Sebastian, and I'm here representing the United States of America in this case. People of the jury, this defendant is guilty of genocide against the Native Americans during exploration and colonization of the New World. With that said, I ask you, the jury, to find this defendant, Hernán Cortes, guilty of the following charges: genocide, theft, human trafficking, and crimes against humanity. The defendant Hernán Cortes first set sail to the New World at the age of 19. He later joined an expedition to Cuba. In 1518, Cortes set off to explore Mexico. Your Honor, Mr. Hernán Cortes was a Spanish conquistador that was destined to kill the Aztec Empire and claim Mexico for Spain. He was so distant that he returned more than once to accomplish what he was set to do. He brought diseases and forced the Aztecs to believe in a god that they didn't already believe in, which is wrong in so many ways. So why would you want to this man innocent? No man who uses deadly force to conquer an empire should be innocent. Cortes brought diseases such as smallpox, plague, and influenza to Mexico. Suffering from diseases that were brought over, some of the Aztecs died of, giving the Spaniards an advantage. Cortes arrived on the Tabasco coast after sailing from Cuba. At first, it appears that he was merely interested in finding gold, but when he learned of the existence of Montezuma Empire, he became determined to conquer the whole kingdom. Once he decided of defeating the Mexicans, he tried to acquire as much information about his enemy as he could. Cortes held the Aztec ruler Montezuma II hostage while his soldiers raided the city. Cortes made Montezuma obey him every rule, forcing his people to tear down the Aztecs' gods' statues and replace them with the statues of crosses and the Virgin Mary. Why is Cortes guilty? He disobeyed the orders from Velazquez. He held Montezuma hostage, and he brought diseases to Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution did its job in gathering and presenting the evidence. The witnesses did their job by taking that witness stand and testifying under oath. Now you are the last link in the chain of justice. Ladies and gentlemen of jury, the family members, leader of the thousands of indigenous people, and the witnesses are present today. Since the conquest of the New Spain, many families have ripped apart, and they are not here with us now in this courtroom, but from their graves they cry out for justice. Justice can only be served by coming back to this courtroom with a verdict of guilty. The responsibility is with you. The safeguards of the Constitution against the slaughter of innocent indigenous people are in your hands. The young hopes of free institutions wait upon your verdict. The Association of Human Rights and the House of Representatives have done its duty. We have constitutionally presented the facts, we have brought the criminal to your bar, and demand judgment at your hands for his high crimes. Never again, if Hernán Cortes quit and free this day, can the millions of indigenous people of this or any other country by constitutional checks of words stay the usurpations of executive power. I speak, therefore, not the language of exaggeration, but the words of truth and soberness, that the future political welfare and liberties of all men and women hang on trembling on the decision of the hour. Thank you all.
Upon arriving to America, Hernando Cortes and his crew heard stories of the great Moctezuma and the sophisticated yet fierce kingdom of Mexico. After hearing so many stories about the wealth of Moctezuma and the enormity of Mexico, Cortes became understandably intrigued. And being the explorer he was, he decided to visit Mexico and meet Moctezuma for himself. So, on November 8, 1519, after enduring one battle after another with hostile tribes along the way, Cortes and his army peacefully entered the city of Mexico in hopes of building a legendary ally for the King of Spain. But by June 24th, less than a year later, they found themselves fleeing for their lives. And they had to continue fighting almost daily to protect themselves as the Mexicans relentlessly ensued, until finally on August 13th, 1521, when one of Cortes' captains captured their leader, Cuauhtemoc. Our case is about what happened between the afternoon of November 8th, 1519, and that of August 13th, 1521, in what should have been a routine mission to spread the messages of Christianity that ended up leaving thousands dead. My client, Hernando Cortes, is a God-fearing man who feels compelled by God to save the souls of the Indians of Mexico. He carries himself with honor, and throughout his time in America, he approached every cacique he encountered with the utmost respect and dignity, giving each one immense riches from his personal store of valuables to show his gratitude for their support. And he showed the greatest generosity toward the Mashika to demonstrate his respect for their lordship over the land. Today, you will hear testimonies from multiple witnesses like Bernal Diaz, Doña Marina, and even King Charles V, who can all attest to Cortes' righteous distinction. Cortes stands before you today charged with crimes against humanity. The prosecution claims that, as a leader, he violated Articles 3 through 5, 9, and 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and should hereby be held responsible for these atrocious crimes. But you will find that Cortes, as a devout and loyal man, only acted in best interest on behalf of higher powers like King Charles V and the Pope. Furthermore, the jury will learn that, as a subject to these powers, Cortes had no authority to declare war on anyone, and therefore cannot be held responsible for violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You will additionally see that all acts of violence committed by the Spanish only occurred as a result of defending themselves against an endless onslaught of offended Mexican warriors. Cortes wanted to meet the Emperor of Mexico and see those mythical lands for himself in an effort to introduce Mexico in its own glory to the king and the rest of the civilized world. After hearing so many tales of Mexico's splendor, who wouldn't want to see it for themselves? But after he arrived, he found the Mexicans deceitfully plotted to kill him and every last Spaniard in his company. To protect himself and the army in his charge, Cortes consulted with his generals, who insisted that capturing Moctezuma was the only way to possibly avoid certain death. Despite this plan, they assumed death was imminent, yet Cortes still commanded his men to be peaceful and respectful toward the Mashika. It was only after learning of a plot to murder one of his generals did his men even attack, and that was to gain the advantage when vastly outnumbered. So I implore each member of the jury to put yourself in Cortes' shoes and ask yourself, what would I have done differently in his place that would not have resulted in the death of my men and myself? I trust you to look at this case with open eyes and common sense, and you'll inevitably find my client Hernando Cortes de Monroy y Pizarro Altamirano not guilty, for he did not have the authority to commit the crimes alleged by the prosecution, to which witnesses will testify. Furthermore, you will see that any actions he indeed committed against the Mashika were defensive and in the interest of survival, that he would have had to risk everything, the lives of his men and himself, as well as his honor and his reputation in Spain, to act any differently towards such an antagonistic people. So the defense calls Bernal Diaz to the stand. So is it true that Cordoba's and Grijalva's expeditions, which arrived earlier than Cortes, arrived peacefully to Cape Catoche and Chapoton?
Yes.
So what do you think is the reason the Indians attacked the Spaniards at Cape Catoche and Chapoton then, once they landed?
I believe that we are foreign and look much different than they are. And I believe that they feared intrusion and had an order from a higher up to slaughter our people.
And so after the crew embarked on the land, what made them believe that the Indians would peacefully allow them into the village?
They nicely and repeatedly insisted that we come visit their village and offered us gifts and food. However, when our guard was the lowest, they attacked us.
Okay. How would you describe Hernando Cortes in your own words?
He was a very honorable and religious man.
Okay. Did you take anyone into slavery while you were on your expedition with Cortes?
No, we never took any slaves under the order of Hernando Cortes. However, when the king ordered us to take slaves, we did, as Cortes believed a free man should be a free man.
Okay. And so did you force any Indians to convert to Christianity using violence or torture?
No, those who converted of their own free will.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Diaz, why did the Spaniards call the newly conquered lands of the Aztec Empire the New Spain?
We called it New Spain as a tribute to the Spanish who lost their lives during our conquest.
So after the conquest of the New Spain, how do you sleep?
I slept most nights with my armor on, as I feared I may die if I take it off.
So we may say that some sleeps of memory might have led to a few omissions, exaggerations, or even small mistakes, later shared in your testaments, right?
I wrote to the best of my ability based off of my memory.
No further questions, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Tlatuani Montezuma to the stand. Tlatuani Montezuma, what was your first impression when you met Hernán Cortés?
I believed he was going to enslave and slaughter my people. However, upon introduction, he was a very honorable man, and I believed him to be the messenger of the god Quetzalcoatl.
Then you can say that as a religious person, that do you agree or disagree with the massacre of your own people in the name of God?
I agree as it appeases to my gods. However, I have given up the cannibalism of my religion to appease Hernando Cortés, as he is a messenger for the god Quetzalcoatl.
If he is a messenger from the gods or from God, can you explain then the many thousands of deaths unjustified while you and Mr. Cortés were in war?
I was trying to convince my people. However, the priests did not agree with me, and we were in constant conflict with Cortez's people.
Overall, Tlatuani Montezuma, would you say you had a solid friendship with Mr. Cortés?
Yes.
No further question, Your Honor.
Okay, Honorable Montezuma, were you aware of Francisco Hernandez de Cordoba and his fleet landing at Cape Catoche?
Yes.
Did you know then about the Indians slaughtering the peaceful crew who had landed there?
Yes.
So who gave the order to begin the massacre of Spanish soldiers at that time?
I was given the order from my gods.
Did Cortes capture any of your people and sell them into slavery while he was in Mexico?
No, he did not, as he believed that my people should be free.
How were you treated when you were taken into captivity, and why do you think they arrested you at that time?
I believe I was arrested to ensure a safe exit from the city of which my people were threatening them. Upon captivity, I was treated with the utmost respect and offered my freedom multiple times. However, my gods have told me to remain in captivity.
Okay. So why did you choose to address your people until your last breath while on the bridge that fateful day?
I wished to stop the conflict.
Thank you. No further questions.
The prosecution calls Hernando Cortes to the stand. So the first question that I have is for Hernando Cortes. Hernando Cortes, what was your main reason for going to Mexico?
My main reason was to convert the heretics from their false religion into the great religion of Christianity and save their souls.
Okay, so is it true that after you decide to convert the Christians to the Christianity, the people that you encountered there, is it true that you made Montezuma obey your every rule that you forced him to do, also forcing his people to tear down the Aztecs' god statues and replace them with the statues of crosses of Jesus and the Virgin Mary?
Those who tore down the idols of the Mexicans converted to Christianity of their own will.
All right. And after your conquest plan in Mexico, many Aztecs died from, at a time, an unknown disease. Was your intention to bring diseases such as smallpox, plague, and influenza to Mexico?
No, it was not. I do not believe any of my men were sick upon arrival.
Mm-hmm. Did you hold the Aztec ruler Montezuma's hostage while your soldiers raided the city?
Incorrect. He came upon his own will.
So then you can say, or can you explain, how did you gain control of the Aztecs?
I gained control by allying with the local tribes of Mexico who did not like the sacrificial religion of the Aztecs.
And then after, how do you build up your army while being in Mexico?
I gave gifts to those who wanted to aid in the conquest, and they helped me with the conquest.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Senor Cortes. My first question for you is, was the King of Spain aware of your intentions in Mexico?
He was.
Okay, if your intention in Mexico was to convert the Indians, then why is the prosecution accusing you of trying to take slaves to sell in the slave trade?
That was Diego Velazquez's initial intention.
So what was your relationship with Velazquez like then?
We do not speak of Velazquez.
Okay. Did you ever enter Mexico with the intention of capturing Moctezuma?
No. When we entered the city, we entered with threats from the Indians who threatened our livelihood. So we asked Montezuma to come with us for a safe exit.
Okay. And then what led up to the arrest of Cuauhtemoc then?
After Montezuma had passed, Cuauhtemoc took power, and within a battle, his people were starving, and he was in a canoe, leaving to get food. And we encountered him and took him on our ship and gave him a comfortable ride back to his land and his wife.
Okay. Would you say that Moctezuma, while he was leading the Aztecs, would you say he was a reliable leader?
Yes.
What led up to the death of Moctezuma in your captivity?
As I previously spoke about earlier, we entered the city with threats, but as Montezuma came with us for what we thought would be a peaceful exit, they hurled rocks and arrows at us, and he took one of those objects and died of the injury later.
So let me get this straight. You're saying he was hit by an arrow or stone. Does that mean he was killed by his own people then?
I believe so.
Thank you, Senor Cortes. No further questions.
The defense calls Cuauhtemoc to the stand. So Cuauhtemoc, how did you come to lead the Mashika?
I was the heir to the throne.
What was your impression of Hernando Cortes?
He was an evil Teule who came with ideas opposed to those of our gods.
Why did you lead the Mashika in a violent revolt against Cortes and his army?
We wanted the freedom to be ourselves, and the Spanish weren't going to allow that.
Did Cortes ever try to reach out and make peace during the battles over Mexico?
Yes, but they weren't going to stop persecuting us.
Thank you. No further questions.
Tlatuani Cuauhtemoc. What was your first impression of the Spaniards the first time you saw them?
I refused to believe that Christianity would be helpful to me or my family, so I sacrificed those who had converted to his European religion.
Did Cortes or his men torture you while you were captured?
Yes, he captured me and immediately tortured me so that I would reveal where my family's treasure was hidden.
Did you know that Hernán Cortés' plan was to build ships to launch a massive naval attack on your city?
No, I wasn't aware of such a malicious plan against my people. I decided then to fight back, but Cortés had horses and guns. With these weapons, he stole the Valley of Mexico straight out of my hands.
No further questions, Your Honor. The prosecution calls to the stand Doña Marina. Doña Marina, did you betray your ancestors in order to satisfy the desires of Hernán Cortés?
I never had any intentions of betrayal. Unfortunately, my community was persecuted to death, and I wasn't able to quit my role as interpreter. The Spaniards promised me gold and freedom if I worked indefinitely for them.
Doña Marina, what was your role during the conquest of New Spain, specifically your duties as interpreter with Hernán Cortés?
My job duties only extended to the interpretation and translation between the Spaniards and my Mexican community.
Doña Marina, then how much agency did you have with your relationship with Hernán Cortés?
Women had no agency. I wasn't able to freely choose my husband.
No further questions, Your Honor.
So, Doña Marina, would you please describe Hernán Cortés in your own words?
He is an honorable man, handsome, very religious.
What is the nature of your relationship with Cortés?
We have a son together, but it's complicated.
Would you say that the Spaniards entered Mexico peacefully?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Fine. Can you please describe the manner in which the Spanish entered Mexico?
Absolutely peacefully. They only fought when attacked and simply wanted to convert the Mashika to Christianity.
So in your opinion, what started the conflict between the Mexica and the Spanish?
I overheard rumors that Montezuma and his papas had been advised by Huitzilopochtli to kill the Spanish once they were comfortable in the city.
So did you ever observe Cortes take slaves to sell in the slave trade?
Only after the king told him to do so, and only after the war had started.
Was Montezuma mistreated by the Spaniards during his captivity at all?
Absolutely not. He was treated with great reverence and was offered his freedom multiple times, which he refused.
Did Cortes ever use violence or force to convert the Indians?
No, but he did order his men to destroy their statues.
Thank you, Doña Marina. No further questions. The defense calls Diego Velazquez to the stand. What was your role in the New World at the time of the conquest?
I was the governor of Cuba.
Why did you decide to commission a voyage to the mainland?
I wanted to capture Indians and sell them as slaves in the slave trade.
Did you authorize Hernando Cortes to lead this voyage?
No, he left before my authorization was final. I had considered asking Grijalva to lead that voyage, but Cortes took the ship without my knowledge and left before my decision was final.
Why did you later send Pamphilo Narvaez after Cortes?
I sent him to kill or capture Cortes for violating my orders.
Were you aware that at least one of Narvaez's soldiers was suffering from smallpox at the time of his arrival to Mexico?
No, I was not aware, but it was not uncommon for sailors to catch smallpox.
Did you know about the effect smallpox would have on the native population prior to authorizing the voyage of Narvaez?
Yes, I had seen the effects of smallpox previously on the inhabitants of Cuba, but we had no idea it would devastate their population as badly as it did. Eventually, these diseases made the Indians worth nothing on the market as slaves, and I had heavily invested in the capture and sale of Indians. I would have never sent Narvaez had I known his men had contracted smallpox and the impact it would have on my investment.
Thank you. No further questions.
Do you consider that Mr. Cortes abused your hospitality and took advantage of the Indians?
Yes, I became suspicious of the independent-mindedness that Cortes had and rescinded the order. Cortes sailed without permission in 1519, and I sent 2 unsuccessful expeditions against him. One was so badly defeated that its commander, Pánfilo de Narváez, and his army went over to Cortes's side.
What was the purpose of your plan in Cuba and Mexico?
As colonists from the second voyage, we needed land and slaves, so we set about conquering and subjugating the unfortunate ignorant native population. I was an active participant in the conquest, first of Hispaniola and then Cuba. Their treasures and economic power benefited our kingdom and God.
No further questions, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Geronimo Aguilar to the stand. Mr. Geronimo Aguilar, once you managed to escape into the interior of the Mexica territory, did you or Mr. Guerrero get attacked or persecuted to death?
No, after our boat was shipwrecked, we encountered a very friendly and welcoming tribe. The Mexican made me feel like I was at home while respecting my vows and my Christian religion's responsibility.
Time after you and Mr. Cortes reunited, did you start persecuting or mistreating the Mexica tribes that welcomed you after your boat was shipwrecked?
When I saw Cortes, my heart was full because I thought I would never be close to my countrymen again. Cortes asked me if, after all those years, I would be able to interpret and translate for the Mexican and him. I decided to join his cause. because he was a man with good ethics and faith in Christian standards.
Yeah. Then, did you take part in the destruction of the Tabascans and later you converted this Mexica tribe to Christianity?
God gave us Cortes and me the opportunity to reach to those Indians. Some of the natives accept the calling from our God and got converted to Christianity, but unfortunately, most of those Indians opposite the divine call in us, the Spaniards, had to use deadly weapons.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Geronimo de Aguilar, why do you think Cortes employed your assistance as an interpreter in addition to Doña Marina?
He didn't trust that what she had interpreted was true, since she was an Indian. So after I learned the language, he asked me to verify her interpretation in addition to interpreting myself.
How receptive were the Indians to conversion?
Most were resistant at first, but after speaking more with Cortes about it, they eventually agreed to baptism.
Thank you. No further questions. The defense calls King Charles V to the stand. Your Highness, what is the extent of your power as a monarch?
I'm the King of Spain, bestowed the crown by our Lord God. I descend from a long line of monarchs, and violation of my order could be grounds for tremendous torture or execution.
What is your role in the Inquisition?
I've been authorized by the Pope, like my father and his father before him, to weed out heretics from all corners of my kingdom. Heresy will not be tolerated anywhere in my kingdom.
Did you give the order for Cortes to take slaves in Mexico?
Yes, Diego Velazquez invests in this voyage for the purpose of capturing and selling slaves, intending to save their souls. Velazquez wrote to me complaining about major losses in his investment. At first, I agreed with Cortes about saving the Indians. I really like that man after all that. But after I learned about the Indians slaughtering his men, I determined that they were hopeless to save from the internal grip of Satan. At that point, it was time to put them in their place. So I ordered courts to take those who survived the conquest as slaves to sell in Española.
What tactics did conquistadores in your service use to convert people?
Oh, the usual: destroy idols and devil book, public tortures and execution, secret information.
Would you say that your subjects under your rule have the right to life, liberty, and security of person, or the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion?
Ha ha ha, no. My subject will do as a command. Otherwise, they will literally suffer the consequence.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Highness.
Mr. King Charles V, did Mr. Cortes send you 5 letters with information about his conquest plan in Mexico? And if so, please tell the audience what were they about.
Cortes kept up a correspondence while Cortes defied the traditional power structure rather than submitting to the will of the Spanish governor of Cuba. Cortes put himself directly under my authority as an excuse to go his own way. This way of his, involves slaughtering indigenous people in the New World for our kingdom glory. We must preserve our pop's wish at all times. Whoever is not with us will be against us, and the deed will follow those who opposite it.
Thank you. What was Mr. Cortes' best achievement during his conquest plan?
Cortes is a man of God. My heart was full when Cortes took Montezuma as a hostage and forced him to swear allegiance to me, the King of Spain, to our popes and our beliefs.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. No further questions, Your Honor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Again, my name is Sebastian, and I am the prosecutor in this case. In my opening statement, I mentioned that I will call for witnesses to testify as to the defendant's guilt. Each witness testify as I explained, and we have established the following facts beyond a reasonable doubt. Number one, that from 1518 to 1522, the defendants did intentionally the crimes of genocide, theft, human trafficking, and crimes against the humanity of thousands of native communities. And number three, that the instrument used to massacre innocent people were deadly weapons of massive destructions powered by dynamite. And number four, that the defendants act without mercy. From the witnesses' testimonies, we also establish that the defendant's primary purpose, his plan of conquering New Spain, would not only satisfy his royalty chiefs, but his own avaricious and cruel self. We would ask you to reject the defense theories of the case. We consider that the defendant's ideas and beliefs regarding his religion were atrocious forms of subjugation against the humanity of innocent native communities. Our witnesses testify how cruel and despicable Cortes was manipulating the idea of Christianity amongst the Mexicans. Cortes imposed his beliefs to the point of killing anybody who opposed them. The testimonies and facts from our witnesses presented today are credible. They have nothing to gain by lying. They offer straightforward evidence of Cortes' tyranny. This defendant has a motive to lie because he does not want to be held accountable for his actions. The defense witnesses lack credibility. Your Honor, our prosecution team consider as a principle that the people in our society be held accountable for their actions. The defense arguments amount to just excuses. The defense considers that the use of daily massive destruction weapons against innocent people was the only form of conversion to Christianity, violating all 5 articles, 3, 4, 5, 9, and 18th of the Human Rights Proclamation. In conclusion, Your Honor, we would ask that you find the defendant guilty as charged. Thank you.
Members of the jury, you have heard testimony from many key players in the conquest. Although some of the witnesses didn't hold Hernando Cortes in high regard, most found him to be an honorable man. Even the great Moctezuma II spoke about Cortes with esteem. Cortes has been accused of violating the Mexicans' right to life, liberty, and freedom of thought, capturing them as slaves for the purpose of sale in the slave trade, torturing and cruelly punishing them, arbitrarily arresting their leaders Moctezuma and Cuauhtemoc, and violating the Mexicans' right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. But as you heard from countless testimonies, Cortes was not the one responsible for these horrific crimes. He was merely a pawn in the greater scheme of the Inquisition and the slave trade. As many witnesses have testified, King Charles V and Diego Velazquez, the governor of Cuba, were actually to blame for these crimes and should therefore bear the burden of these charges, not my client. In fact, Cortes refused to take slaves until ordered to do so by the King of Spain, and he was also ordered to convert the Indians by the king. As is the case with most of history, we can hear through our witnesses' testimonies that the real evil in the conquest arose from corrupt figures in power. As a result of these dysfunctional systems, Mexico was forced to change forever. As a natural explorer and someone who deemed himself to be diplomatic, Cortes was intrigued by the vast mystique presented by the great and powerful Mexican Empire. And when he encountered the splendor of Mexico alongside the horror of their sacrificial and cannibalistic practices, he made it his personal goal to save their souls and correct their paths, as he had been taught to do. Asking the Mashika to halt these practices made them understandably upset. So they attacked, and Cortes and his men defended themselves effectively against their onslaughts, winning in the end. It's easy to place blame on victors for the atrocities of war, but my client was just a general following orders from both the governor of Cuba and the king of Spain. In fact, as witnesses have testified, whenever Cortes acted in accordance with his own moral judgment, he became an outlaw, pursued by authorities enforcing an unjust system. Panfilo Narvaez, for instance, would not be mentioned in this courtroom today were he not sent by Velazquez to kill Cortes for refusing his order to capture slaves in Mexico. Members of the jury, the prosecution looks at the crimes that were committed in Mexico and assumes the first Spanish authority to arrive there to be responsible. But I implore you to look at the bigger system of corruption that fueled European expansion into the Americas, and ask yourself if one of our proud soldiers had carried out orders to assassinate a foreign dictator, resulting in a brutal war, would you blame that soldier or the leader who carelessly gave the order? What if the same soldier tortured captives while fighting in that war? Who would we blame for that, the soldier or the leader who put the soldier into that avoidable situation? You decide. Thank you.